pain. Each podcast theme we are doing an interview with at least one international expert on the subject. And this time the theme is pain. Last international expert on the subject with ACL injuries was late Dr. Fu. And this time we have, we are very glad to have done an interview on the 17th of February with Peter O'Sullivan. Peter O'Sullivan is a professor of musculoskeletal physiotherapy at the Curtin University in Perth, Australia, and he's working at the Pijn company. We all, as professionals, know that Peter O'Sullivan has a long history of different publications on the subject pain. As I said, Thursday the 17th we did this interview, and we already sent this as a podcast in a Dutch with a Dutch intro. The second international expert on this subject will be in the next podcast at the end of April, and that will be Wim Dankaerts. He is a professor of musculoskeletal physiotherapy at the University of Leuven in Belgium. And he is also connected to the Pijn organization. So, well, have a lot of fun with this interview I did with Peter O'Sullivan. First, thank you very much that you're making some time for us. When I look at all your publications and your work, it's a wonder you have time to spare. So I was a little bit surprised that you made some time for us. Thank you very much for that.
Well, I like talking about the work that we do, and just to be clear that the publications are a team of people.
That's right.
Yep, big team of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But if I see your participation in all the publications you're doing, it's incredible. Yeah. How many did you do last year?
I'm not sure.
Approximately.
I don't know, maybe 26.
Something like that.
26,
yeah.
something like
incredible,
that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But the main. Sorry.
No, I was going to say it kind of. I'm very fortunate to be in a situation where I'm connected to lots of different people in different parts of the world doing some really interesting work. So it allows for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, our podcast series this time is about pain, actually. So, of course, it's a global burden, something like $635 billion every year. One of the biggest expenses in healthcare, more than heart diseases, cancer, diabetes. If you look at that, physiotherapists and manual therapists pay a lot of attention to this and are trained in this, or are trained for this, and is one of the major professional groups, of course, who has to do with pain. The reason I approached you are some of your publications, of course, and for all the 2015 publication about the stigmatized or feel unprepared to treat people with low back pain and psychosocial factors that influences recovery. And of course, the last one you did with the group with the GP Canero. It's an accepted manuscript, and it's about the title is From Fear to Safety. Well, these are, of course, you are one of the founders of CTF. And
CFT.
CFT, excuse me.
Yeah, no worries.
There we go, dyslexia. And you are recognized internationally as a leading clinician, researcher, and educator. So I have some questions for you.
Yeah, no worries.
What is the history about, or what is the history on the subject pain and the progressive insight so far in the last 30 years? What's changed in your perception?
Yeah, okay, that's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I suppose across my career, and I've been lucky to have spanned that 30 years in my career, but if I think of myself as a young physiotherapist with a lot of questions and not many answers, that reflected the fact that there was not a lot of research into pain at the time. And so we had very limited understanding of pain, and it was predominantly structural, biomedical, biomechanical understanding of pain. And so we had kind of systems, I suppose, in physiotherapy that kind of evolved out of manual therapy, massage, and exercise that we applied to that understanding. And if I look at what's happened across 30 years, there's just been this explosion of knowledge, research, understanding that it's not that those structural and biomechanical factors that we thought underpinned everything probably underpin a very small group of patients. And in fact, it's not that they're not important, but they're probably not the most important thing for the majority of people. And the big barriers for people recovering for back pain, for example, but it could be for any musculoskeletal pain, are often not related to structure or biomechanics, but they're more related to illness perceptions and behaviors. So an example of that might be if I develop back pain and I have a belief that that pain means that my back is damaged and therefore I need to protect my back and guard it, and that makes me frightened. Those factors are more predictive of me not getting better than what would show up on a scan, for example.
Would you dare to give a percentage of how many people, what the percentage is of those influences in low back pain?
Well, we know, if you look at, so we've been lucky to be involved in population research. And we've tracked a group of, in Western Australia, young people from the age of 14 up into their 30s, for example. And we know that about 45% of young people at the age of 14 have reported back pain. That's about 70% at the age of 18 up towards the age of 22. And a lot of those people track right through. And at the age of about 17, about 1 in 5 of those people are reporting neck pain, back pain, taking time off school, seeking care, taking medication. And if you look at that group, there's a group of people with back pain who don't seek care, and there's a group of people who do seek care. So we don't know about a lot. Well, what we know about a lot of those people, there are people in our community who hurt their back, get on with it, never seek care, don't take medication, get on with their lives. And when you profile those two groups of people, the things that predict the ones who are more likely to seek care, more likely to take time off school, take time off work, avoid activity, physical activity, they come down to things like their belief systems. So if you have a negative belief around back pain, that back pain, will impact on your life negatively, and then it may lead to ongoing problems in the future, you're more likely to be the person who'll make sense, go and seek care, take medication, avoid work, physical activity. And those behaviors emerge very early in life. So we know, for example, that you can identify those people at the age of 17 are way more, taking time out of school, are way more likely to be taking time out of work at the age of 25 and at the age of 30. So we develop our beliefs around pain very early on in life, and they're influenced by social factors, our parents' response to pain. We learn pain from an early stage in life. We learn it from our peers. We learn it from our experiences. We learn it from our carers. and that then can set a trajectory for later life. Right. And of course, other factors into play with that. We know, if you've had a tough early life, we know that significant life stress events. We know living in a toxic family relationship. Those things set the system up. They set up the nervous system to be more responsive, to increase the risk of you developing pain and persistent pain down the track. Mm-hmm. So I think in answer to your question, our whole understanding of pain has completely changed. That this can be related pathology in a really small group, like maybe 3 to 5%. Mm-hmm. But for the majority of people, it's not clearly linked to, clear pathology. And it's influenced by a whole bunch of factors. The majority of us will get back pain in our life. Mm-hmm. The group that become disabled, that's the group we're interested in. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like saying who gets a cold and who gets chronic fatigue after a cold.
Right.
Well, that's the group you got to look for. Right. Who cares about who gets a cold? Because the majority get better. And it's probably the COVID story right now as well. Mm-hmm. Like, who are the people at risk of COVID and of long COVID? They've got to be our interest.
Did you have COVID?
No. Just to be, we've been in lockdown, and we still are in Western Australia. Yes. We literally haven't been able to fly out of our state for 2 years.
Incredible.
Well, there was a brief window when we could go to New Zealand, and that lasted for about a month, but nowhere else. So, no, we're only now, for the first time, we're 98% vaccinated in our state.
God, that's a lot.
And we're still in lockdown. And we're only now starting to see COVID come into the population now.
Oh my God, yeah.
Crazy. So we just watched around the world going, what is going on?
Well, luckily enough, here in Holland, we're leaving all those measurements this weekend. So it's open again, and next week it's totally open again. But the figures are insane when you see how many people are having COVID right now. But
and again, it's a bit like pain.
It is.
I think now we're saying, well, look, COVID for the majority, if you're vaccinated, is not going to be a big problem. But we need to protect vulnerable groups. We need to identify those who are at risk and protect them, and deliver right care for them. And that's how the pain story is, essentially. Mm-hmm.
Well, you already mentioned what have changed the last 30 years, and what is interesting to see is that there are, at least that's the way I see it, two groups in Australia. The Lorimer Mosley group and your group, and which is very nice to see is that you joined into the From Fear to Safety paper. How did it go?
Well, just to be clear, there are lots of groups in Australia, different research groups that are looking at the problem from a different perspective. Right. And we've just identified two groups.
I don't see you as enemies or stuff like that, but
no.
But there's another insight.
Exactly. Yes. And our view on this is it's such a big problem having different people who look at a problem from different perspectives adds to a broader perspective. Mm-hmm. And so, look, this all stemmed from J.P. Canero's PhD. So he was particularly interested in pain-related fear in people with back pain. So, and he, if you tracked his work, he was interested. We had a professor of psychology. Right. We had a professor of pain psychology, which was Stephen Linton. Mm-hmm. We had Lorimer's background in terms of neurophysiology of pain. Mm-hmm. Mine was a clinical perspective. So we built a team around Anne Smith, who's a methodologist, physiotherapist, a biostatistician. So we built a team around JP's project. And so he looked at the lived experiences of people with pain-related fear linked to back pain. And then he tracked the process of change for those people through a CFT intervention. which essentially took them from a point of being disabled and frightened of pain to an understanding that it was safe. So the fear to move versus safety to move. And he tracked that journey with them and looked at the factors that changed as people improved. And the kinds of things that changed. He's got a beautiful paper in Behavioural Research and Therapy journal that looked at things like people's perception of controllability of pain, their levels of pain-related fear. And when those things changed, their pain levels and disability changed. So fear and pain for those people were very coupled. Fear and pain and disability was very kind of connected. And you know, part of his paper was kind of tracking that, what has to change for those things to change for these people. There was a qualitative component to that as well. So that paper that was in Physical Therapy journal was essentially an overview of JP's work in his PhD thesis.
Well, what was new for me, but probably not for the rest of the world, is that you already start with on a very low level of anxiety with CFT. I always thought it was more for the more well, how do you can use the word chronic, but chronicle, but you already start with graded exposure stuff, if I understand it right, when I can say that safety learning is the same as graded exposure, or is it a little bit different?
So it depends on how you describe graded exposure. So there are kind of three pillars to the intervention. One is what we call making sense of pain, which is to help people to understand the meaning of their pain through their own narrative, their own experience.
That's more
their own understanding, beliefs.
Mostly group, of course.
Which is a bit different to the traditional pain neuroscience. This is more about taking the person's narrative and helping them make sense of their own story in their own words. That makes sense, but from a biopsychosocial perspective. That's that part. And then the second part is what we would call behavioural learning, where you would take someone who might be frightened, for example, of bending and lifting, which is a common thing in back pain, and taking them through a graded process of exposure, but doing it in a way where you disarm them. So one of the things that we know is that if a person's frightened, that will be linked to pain thoughts. It's like, oh, it's dangerous to bend, I might damage myself. It's a link to emotions, which is, I'm frightened. And it's linked to a behavior, which is, I'm tense. I will tense and protect my back. I won't bend it. And so the exposure part is to dismantle those factors through a behavioral experience. So, for example, if your body's response to do something threatening is to tense up, which is a normal response if you're frightened, teaching that person to relax their body, to not guard their core, to breathe into their belly, to get out of that fight, flight, or fright response into deep relaxation.
Is that what you mean, disarmed? These factors? Yeah, right.
Yeah, disarmed.
Yes, right.
And then gradually take them back to the threatening task in a way that feels safe for them. Right. So that over a period of a session, it usually happens within a session, the person goes from a pain experience, a fear experience, and a belief, and a protective guarding response to relaxing their body, moving it, realizing that actually it was less painful than what they thought it would be, and that has an effect of disarming their fear or reducing their fear.
How many times do you have to repeat this form?
So we've looked at that. The first session looks to be particularly important, and we've got data that we haven't yet published looking at the change over time. But the first session looks to be really important, and then the follow-up sessions are more to help the person generalize that learning and put it back into their life. Right. So there's no point that you are confident to move in my treatment room, but when you go home and you pick up your child, you're terrified. Yes. So the subsequent sessions are about generalizing that learning into activities of daily living. And for some people, that's really tough. For some people, it's like a light bulb moment where within a session, you can see their pain go from, 8 out of 10 to 2 out of 10 within a treatment session. When you disarm them, when you build their self-efficacy, when you reduce their fear, you teach them to relax their body, and they have this kind of light bulb moment of going, whoa, that's just turned my world upside down. For others, it's a much more graduated process. And if you track JP's cases that he published, you'll see that everyone's trajectory is unique to them. And also that there are flare-ups along that journey as well. And the interesting thing is the things that tended to be related to these pain exacerbations were getting sick, getting run down, getting stressed, periods of inactivity, coming off medications like opioids. It wasn't usually physical factors that triggered these pain events. And that speaks to our knowledge of chronic pain being very much mediated through the immune system. That, things that trigger the immune system can trigger pain. Right. So things like not sleeping, being stressed, not exercising, being run down, getting the flu, getting COVID, for example, those things could become a trigger for a pain event. And those opportunities, those pain events are critical opportunities to reinforce learning as well.
Can you tell me what the success rate is of CFT? Do you have figures on that? Or?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We're currently completed a big trial here in Australia for people with disabling back pain. And it's the largest trial to date. I think we've had over 400 people recruited in that trial. We'll have much better understanding of that from that data set. So hopefully sometime later this year, we'll have more understanding of that from a decent data set. The trials to date have been relatively small, so it's hard to gauge that. But we'll have a better understanding of that. But let me be clear on this. Not everyone responds. And there was a lovely qualitative paper that Sam Bunsley led, which looked at the responders and non-responders. And the people who responded said that they understood pain. They had a kind of a new understanding of pain from a biopsychosocial perspective. They had developed pain control strategies so they could get back to their life, get living again.
And
those who didn't,
and still they had pain.
Yeah, but much less pain.
All right.
Much less pain. So the thing around pain is so interesting because we know that if you feel you can control something like pain, it will reduce your worry, anxiety, and fear. Right. You have control over it. Right. If pain is something you have no control over, if it's intense, it's not predictable, it's not controllable, that will increase your level of distress.
Right.
And so we explicitly teach the ability to control pain through regulating thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And so those people who have said that, they report significantly less pain and basically say, I've got back to living again and I don't need to seek care anymore. The people who've said, look, you've missed something here, my back is damaged, there's something you're missing, I need it fixed, I've got no control over my pain, I'm disabled. That's the group that we're missing out on. And, if you understand the landscape, we've got a society that is giving 100 different messages to people with back pain that, your back's, you need to be scanned, you need to be fixed, you need more treatment, you need an injection, you need drugs, you need surgery. So we're promoting an intervention that swims against the tide, that goes against all the messaging that happens out in the community. And
it's a tough job, right?
It's a really tough job. It's a tough sell.
Right.
It's like trying to market something that has got it's like you're trying to market something that's going to do you out of a job.
But like, can't we make it easier to put the CFT method or any other method which is more on this track put that into the PT schools.
Well, we think so.
And not only PT schools, but also general practitioner schools and specialist schools and universities.
Yeah. So I think it's starting to happen. One of the things that I think generally around the university education systems, a lot of more updated evidence is being put into those training programs. I think what's probably happening at the moment is we have a much better understanding of the factors that are underpinning pain. Right. We probably haven't adjusted our training to upskill people to confidently deliver those interventions. So, that's an area that we're particularly interested in and we're involved in at the moment, is developing resources to upskill clinicians to better manage pain, because it's tough. And look, every patient that comes in will come in with a whole bunch of beliefs, a whole bunch of expectations that may not be evidence-based. How do you manage that as a clinician? Because we hear a lot of times people go, well, we told them all the right stuff and they never came back. So a lot of those messages can feel very invalidating for people with pain. And so we have to be expert communicators. We have to be expert communicators to deal with people who are distressed, who are frightened.
That's another question for you. How do we communicate to our patients? Because communication is, of course, one of the hardest things to do. I think we all have to be very careful in what we're saying to patients.
Yeah, of course we do.
Do you have any techniques for that? For
how you can
you can reach your patient better?
Yeah, Ian Cow, there's some great resources out there. So Ian Cow did his PhD in the United Kingdom, and I was involved with that. And his PhD analysed conversations essentially of people before and after being trained in CFT. That we train people to communicate, we train people to listen, to reflect, to validate, to educate in a way that is empowering the patient and not invalidating for them. We have developed a communication quiz called lowbackpaincommunication.com, if you want to listen to it, which is a quiz.
I'm going to write it down now. One more time, please.
Lowbackpaincommunication.com. And that's a quiz that we developed to describe unhelpful versus helpful communication for patients. And that's been really popular because it's basically gives two scenarios, a helpful scenario and an unhelpful scenario. And it talks about the evidence behind them. And that's the kind of resources that we're interested in developing to support clinicians having difficult conversations. Because we face them every day in practice. And I think we haven't spent the time training that. And we're, in our university, we're doing that now. We're changing our curriculum to update our programs to align with the evidence. We need to do that all around the world. As the evidence evolves.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You already put on a paper the 10 things which are mostly crap about low back pain. If you have to pick one out of the 10, when I put a knife on your throat and you have to pick one, which one would you pick?
Look, I think the most devastating one for patients is that pain means I'm damaged.
Right.
I think that's the most devastating one, because if people think they're damaged, they will protect, they'll guard, they'll avoid, they'll seek scanning, they'll seek to be fixed.
Right.
I think that's probably the most unhelpful one. And look, to be fair, there are people who are damaged.
Right.
We see people who have fractures, who have massive disc prolapses, where there is tissue pathology. We need to make sure we screen for that. So that's not a message you can give everyone with back pain. You need to triage them first to make sure that you've triaged and eliminated the possibility of pathology, and then you can give that message.
Of course.
Yeah, but unfortunately, a lot of people who have no pathology have been given that message, because I've been given a scan that shows, normal findings for people on the scan, and that's become pathologized and frightens them.
Mm-hmm. Peter, we're running out of time.
No worries.
Unfortunately, I could talk for hours with you. Wim Dankaerts, you know Wim Dankaerts, of course, of your group.
Wim was my first PhD student.
Oh, cool. I'm going to interview him as well. So, do you have a question for Wim?
Look, a question for Wim. I go, Wim, are you working too hard? Still.
But it's the same with you, I guess.
That would be my question. That would be my question for Wim. Whenever I see Wim, I'm going, Wim, have you cut your hours down? Have you spent more time with your family?
Oh, that's good.
Are you exercising enough? And I think probably, there are questions I ask myself as well.
Right.
Because I think, if you're involved in, as he is, academia, clinical work and teaching, it's a tough journey because you're bridging lots of different you're trying to cover lots of bases, and keeping healthy and keeping well and keeping a balanced life is a bloody hard challenge when you do that.
Well, it's clear.
So we need to encourage each other on that, right?
That's right.
That's what we encourage for our patients.
Right. Could you, the last question, could you give a take-home message for patients?
Yeah, listen to them. Listen to them. Just listen to them. An open question, like my first question to a patient is, tell me your story. That's the first question I ask anyone who walks into my room, and within the first minute, they'll tell you something that's deeply important about their story. Listen to them. We spend way too much time talking and not enough time listening. Our patients bring all the knowledge to the table. They are the expert in their own condition. We just need to get outside our head and put ourselves in their shoes and listen to them and understand their fears, their concerns, their hopes, their dreams, their goals, their worries, and then through that lens, help them on a journey.
Right. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you one more thing. You're coming to Holland somewhere in September to speak on
No, I'm not, actually.
Oh,
no.
I was going there with a bottle of wine for you.
No, well, you're welcome, but you'll be drinking it on your own.
Oh, my God.
I think the story there is I'll be zooming in from Australia to Holland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I have the opportunity to meet you, I already saw you once in Singapore on a conference of low back pain and pelvic girdle pain. Whenever I have the chance to see you, which wine do I have to bring with me? Which wine do you like, especially?
Well, I like red wine.
Red wine, but what red wine? Do you have?
Look, I'm pretty choosy. I'm not that choosy on good red wine. I mean, we have certain varieties here.
Exactly.
New Zealand has Pinot Noir. We have Shiraz, Cab Sav. All of those wines are lovely.
But are you more the person of a big red wine or?
Yeah, I like a big red wine.
More like smooth.
Yeah, I do.
Like a Barolo or stuff like that.
Yeah. Look, it depends on my mood.
Yeah, right.
So
That's right.
I'm okay with a variety. I kind of like variety.
That's right. Well, Peter, thank you very much. It was very nice to speak to you, and I hope I can see you soon somewhere.
Yeah. Well, one day again we will fly, I presume.
I hope
but
so.
I kind of feel like with the way the world's going and how our planet, we have to be way smarter about communicating like this, and probably not hopping on a plane as much as well.
That's right. For the environment, it's much better.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Pleasure.
And thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Bye-bye. See you. So, this was the interview so far with Peter O'Sullivan. Our next podcast will be a podcast with Professor Wim Dankaerts. He's a professor of musculoskeletal physiotherapy at the University of Leuven in Belgium. So I hope you will listen next month again. So have a nice day. Bye-bye.